A woman taps her card at a grocery self-checkout. The total appears, the terminal chirps, and the screen flashes red. Transaction not approved. Restricted purchase. She looks around embarrassed. Her account has money in it. Her card isn't expired. Nothing is wrong in any way she can explain. The system simply decided she doesn't get to buy what she wants today. Over the past 6 videos, we've pulled apart the financial matrix, how the money system really works, and who controls it. But across the world, people are already building something outside that cage without asking anyone's permission. A lock only works if there's no other door. So today, we open the second door. For decades, the global economy ran on one idea: efficiency. A factory in Vietnam ships parts to Germany, which assembles a product sold in Canada. Every step optimized for cost, every transaction routed through the same handful of banks and payment networks. That model is cracking apart. In 2026, the pressure is coming from every direction at once. Tariffs between major trading blocs are escalating, and ships that once crossed oceans on schedule now sit in port for weeks. Every cross-border shipment comes wrapped in carbon compliance paperwork that didn't exist 5 years ago. The European Union is already in retreat. In December 2025, the European Commission launched its Resource EU Action Plan, a policy designed to drag critical supply chains inside European borders. The plan mobilizes 3 billion euros to have Europe's dependency on outside suppliers of rare earths and battery metals before 2029. The EU calls it open strategic autonomy. In plain language, Europe is building its own supply lines because it no longer trusts the global ones. Companies across every sector are following the same instinct. Supplier lists are getting shorter, and regional contracts are replacing global ones. Inventory that used to arrive just in time now sits in local warehouses just in case. This circles back to what we've been exposing in our previous videos in this series. When trade corridors fragment, payment corridors fragment with them. Transactions shift toward regional settlement systems and digital alternatives that route around the traditional gatekeepers. Central banks that once controlled global money flows are watching volume bleed into crypto networks and bilateral systems beyond their reach. The parallel economy taking shape right now grows out of pure necessity. The global system is fracturing under its own weight, and once trade goes regional, the real question drops to the local level. How do ordinary communities keep value circulating among themselves? The simplest way to step outside programmable money is one most people overlook. You don't need a new cryptocurrency or a secret offshore account. You need a new counterparty. Buy from a corporate retailer and every dollar passes through the extraction layer we exposed in video 3. The banks, the payment processors, the middlemen who each take a cut and produce nothing. Buy from someone in your own community and those extractors disappear from the transaction. For most of commercial history, trade worked exactly this way. Relationship between real people exchanging real value face to face. The centralized layer, supermarket chains, bank intermediated payments, corporate logistics, came later. It was bottled on top. A local loop is what happens when food, labor, repair work, and everyday services circulate among nearby people instead of draining upward to distant corporations. Community-supported agriculture is the clearest example. It works like a farm subscription. Members prepay a local grower at the start of a season and share in whatever the harvest produces. The USDA describes it as a model where consumers and growers share both the risks and the rewards of food production. That is the opposite of a supermarket where the farmer sees pennies on every dollar you spend. Then there are local exchange trading systems, community-run credit networks where participants earn credits by providing services like plumbing or carpentry and spend those credits on what other members offer. No bank loan required, no interest charged. Here's how a loop actually closes. A mechanic fixes a farmer's truck and earns credits. The farmer's supplies produce to local families who pay in credits. Those families hire a carpenter, and the carpenter builds a greenhouse for the farmer. Value circulates inside the community instead of leaking out through fee layers and debt. The governance holding this together is simple: reputation and repeated interaction. If someone deals unfairly, the community routes around them. Local trade handles the economic layer, but the communication channels underneath it are still controlled by someone else. And controlled channels have an off switch. In 2011, Egypt's government shut down the internet across the entire country for 5 days. In 2019, India cut connectivity to Kashmir for months. The infrastructure most people depend on for daily communication has a single point of failure, and governments know exactly where it is. Thankfully, there are people building networks designed to work without it. A mesh network is a collection of small, inexpensive radio devices that pass message from one node to the next, hopping across a chain of relays until the message reaches its destination. There is no central tower, no telecom company in the middle deciding who gets it to communicate. If one node goes down, the message routes around. The technology making this real right now is called LoRa, short for long range. It's a low-power radio protocol that sends small packets of data across several kilometers on a single battery charge. Alongside satellite links and peer-to-peer protocols, LoRa is one of several tools enabling off-grid communication. Pair it with Meshtastic, an open-source project that turns cheap LoRa boards into encrypted mesh communicators, and you have a decentralized messaging system anyone can afford. Off-the-shelf Meshtastic nodes sell online for $10 to $35. A neighborhood of 20 households can build a working communication grid for the cost of a single smartphone. Each node's range is modest on purpose, a few kilometers in open terrains, less intense urban areas. The real power comes from multi-hop relay. Each device extends the network by passing messages forward. If any node has internet access, it can sync local traffic to the wider web. When that connection disappears, the local mesh keeps running on its own. A farmer posts weekly pickup windows to the mesh. Buyers across 3 neighborhoods confirm orders through message. A volunteer relays logistics updates between clusters. The entire coordination happens without a cell tower or an app that can revoke access. In video 4, we covered hardware wallets. Small offline devices that store the cryptographic keys to your digital assets beyond the reach of any bank or platform. Combine that self-custody layer with a mesh communication network, and you have the 2 missing pieces of the second grid. Money no one can freeze, and communication no one can shut down. Privacy in this context means something specific. It means choosing who you trade with and who knows about it, without a platform recording every exchange. In video 5, we exposed the Great Reset and the stakeholder model the World Economic Forum promotes. On paper, it sounds reasonable. Businesses should serve society, not just shareholders. In practice, it works a little differently. The stakeholder model doesn't ask what you want, it assigns you a score, attaches conditions to your access, and measures your compliance until you conform. Your bank, your employer, your digital wallet, every node in your financial life becomes an enforcement point that a centralized authority can leverage without your agreement. That is top-down control dressed in the language of community. The second grid inverts that architecture. The direction of control runs upward from individuals, not downward from institutions. In a sovereign network, your relationships are the enforcement mechanism. If a trading partner treats you unfairly, you leave and trade with someone else. There is no algorithm locking you in, no score penalizing you for switching. The ability to exit is what separates voluntary cooperation from compliance. Think about who actually holds a community together when systems fail. A mechanic who keeps vehicles running, a nurse who provides basic care, a farmer who grows food, and builders who repair roofs after storms, right? These people matter because they keep others alive. Finding them is simpler than it sounds though. CSA programs, repair cooperatives, skill swap boards, and neighborhood mutual aid groups are full of people who already sense that the financial system is rigged. Trust starts small. You lend a tool, trade a service, and repeated interaction builds a track record over time. Here is the connection back to the core of this series. The Bank of England published it openly in 2014. The majority of money in the modern economy is created by commercial banks making loans. That is the 97% we named this channel after. When your entire daily life depends on bank-created money, flowing through bank-controlled rails, controlling you is straightforward. When part of your life runs on direct exchange and community credit, that leverage weakens. The second grid is interdependence with consent. Obligations are visible, disputes are handled locally, and no single institution holds the keys to your participation. The parallel economy is forming right now, in every community where someone decides to build a second option for something they currently depend on one provider for. Every layer of your financial life that runs through a single choke point can be switched off by someone you have never met. Resilience means building a second path for each of those layers, 10% at a time. Move 1/10 of your weekly spending into channels no central authority controls, a recurring CSA share, a standing order at a farmer's market, a neighborhood called by group. Not a gesture, a habit. Track it week by week until the second grid can carry weight when the first one fails. The grid is local, but the threat is global. Next, we expose the sovereignty rating, how they plan to score your very soul. So here is your move. In the comments below, write down one thing you will shift into the second grid in the next 7 days. Not an opinion, an action. If you want the next layer of this story, subscribe and hit the bell so this briefing reaches the people who need it. They have the machine, but we have each other.